Why don't you just give us your definition of what transparency should look like?
Yeah, let me just say that phrase, along with authenticity, I think is probably the most overused phrase in the business world right now by companies. Mm-hmm. It's quite insincere most of the time.
Well, welcome to Shift Digital. I'm your host, Chris Bass. Shift Digital is brought to you by MediaFuel, a digital marketing agency that distinguishes brands and helps them generate demand. Full transparency, I'm also president and managing partner of MediaFuel. You can learn more about us at MediaFuel.net. But enough about us. Shift Digital is all about leadership in marketing and growing your business. And with that, I'm happy to welcome our guest today. This is episode Dose, and Marcus Sheridan is with me. He is a entrepreneur, sales professional, marketing professional. He's done it all in growing businesses. And he's also the author of They Ask, You Answer. And just looking it up, it was the #1 marketing book to read in 2017 by Mashable. Marcus, you launched River Pools. You have an advertising agency. Thanks for taking the time to be with us today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And hopefully we'll say something that gets your listeners excited and ready to take action, because after all, that's what it's all about, right?
Absolutely. Well, I know you will have something to say. I may not, but I know you
will have something to say.
Yes. And today we're going to talk about what transparency really looks like in marketing.
Yeah.
And why most companies don't actually do it. So why don't we just start there? Why don't you just give us your definition of what transparency should look like?
Yeah, let me just say that phrase, along with authenticity, I think is probably the most overused phrase in the business world right now by companies. Mm-hmm. It's quite insincere most of the time. Mm-hmm. Because if you're transparent, it means the buyer, the prospect, is not left wanting. When they're vetting you from a digital perspective, which today we know that the average buyer / customer has gone through roughly 70 to 80% of the buying process before they engage a company. So in other words, before they fill out the form, before they walk through the doors, before they call you, whatever the thing is, however they get in touch, we know on average, B2B and B2C, no exceptions here, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. 70 to 80%. And even if somebody's lower than that as a company, they're much higher than they were 10 years ago, especially 20 years ago, which was roughly really the advent of the internet just starting to go crazy, right? Mm-hmm. So what is transparency? Transparency means during that 70 to 80%, somebody can say, I was fed, I was satiated, and I don't feel like I'm lacking the information that I need so as to be able to make a decision. Transparency means that the company is willing to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. You see, most companies only want to talk about the good, mm-hmm. and that makes them sound like everybody else in the world. That's not special. It's not unique. Mm-hmm. But when you talk about the bad and the ugly, and what I mean by that is there's just many perceived or questions or worries or fears that are perceived as negative by the business. What's interesting about that, Chris, it's not until buyers are very serious about actually buying something mm-hmm. that they research what's wrong with the thing.
Yeah. Yep.
Case in point, you mentioned it. I'm a pool guy originally, OG, right? Yeah. And started a fiberglass swimming pool company in 2001. So one of the most common questions we would get are things like this. Are fiberglass pools ugly? Are fiberglass pools cheap? Do fiberglass pools pop out of the ground? What are the problems with fiberglass pools? These are prolific questions that people are asking in the marketplace. Yeah. Guess what? Most fiberglass pool companies still, to this day, even though I've talked about it ad nauseum now for over 10 years, do not address those things. Thus, they're not transparent. They don't win that 70 to 80%. And if you want them to make that call, fill out that form, walk through the doors. You got to be willing to think about it differently. You got to be willing to give them more, teach them more, say more than everybody else in your space is willing to teach, do, or say.
Yeah. Yep. So you mentioned it. You mentioned some of the ugly there. Do fiberglass pools pop out of the ground?
Yeah.
How do you handle that as a brand? How should you deal with that?
You don't even have to analyze how you handle it so much because they're already handling it. You meet with a homeowner, hypothetically. Homeowner says, well, could these pop out of the ground? What's the answer? The answer is probably some semblance of an honest answer. Well, could they? Yes, they could. Just like any type of pool, concrete could pop out of the ground, a vinyl liner can float. Now, what can prevent that from happening is the core of this conversation. And then you teach what will prevent it from happening.
Yep.
So it is not smart to ignore the elephant in the room. And too many companies, they take the elephant, let's say that it's any of these number of questions.
Yep.
Are fiberglass pools cheap? Do they pop out of the ground? What are the problems? They put the elephant in the corner, and they think the buyer's not going to see the elephant in the corner. It's a freaking elephant. The buyer isn't dumb. Even the uninformed are eventually going to become informed. That's how it works. That's why we have this thing called the internet. And so this idea of we can allow the buyer to live in a state of ignorance in 2021 and beyond and still become the voice of trust in our space, because that is the end game.
Yeah.
The end game is if we really are transparent, if we're really willing to listen and address those questions, worries, fears, issues, concerns on our website, through text, through video, which is the essence of the Ask You Answer, well then we just might become that voice of trust for them. And that's who they're going to give their business to. That's business. That's not going to change. That is going to be as relevant to your business and mine, Chris, 20 years from today as it is right stinking now.
Absolutely.
That will not change. It's a principle of truth. That's the beauty behind trust. You ask somebody, when did trust happen? When did it occur? When was it born? There's no answer for that. Why? It's a principle.
Yeah.
When's it going to go away? I have no idea. Never.
Yeah.
Never.
Absolutely.
It's a principle. When's Facebook going to die? Hopefully soon. It's a program. It's a platform. It's not a principle. There's a big difference. You build your business, your sales and marketing philosophies and strategies around principles. You don't care what happens to the marketplace because you bring that philosophy to the next thing. So when it goes from MySpace to Facebook to whatever the next thing is, you move with it and you're not concerned about it because you're just rinsing and repeating. You don't have to change who you are. And you weren't built on a platform. You were built on principle.
Yeah, that's a great point. And as you were just brought this topic up, as we were thinking about it, one of my favorite brands, Southwest.
Yeah.
They've gone through a debacle in the last month.
Yep.
And I really feel like what you just said there, trust, it's a principle. I really feel like they've broken that principle with their customers over the last few weeks. They had the campaign Transfarency. They've been fairly transparent, and that has been part of the brand for a long time, up until just recently. I feel like overnight they've killed the brand. What's your perspective on the Southwest incident that's just happened here with flights canceled? And it's really an internal debate that's happening that they're not being honest about, it seems like.
It's a loaded question, right? It's a loaded question. And sometimes when you're spinning the drain, you just got to flush it all out, and then you have to essentially get back to the basics. You got to cut your losses. What Southwest did not do is, but what's so sad is we've been taught, and I'm going to get a little bit political here, and I don't really care, because it's not a party-based thing. It is a political thing here. We see all day, every day, for the last decade, spin, spin, spin. I watch people stand in front of the media, and for the most part, they're spinning the whole time. They're not giving truth.
Right. It's a narrative.
It's a narrative,
Yeah.
and this is why they are not trusted.
Mm-hmm.
The media does the same thing. They've lost their trust.
Mm-hmm.
So who's left? Well, you got family, hopefully,
Yeah.
and a few outliers in business. A few outliers in business. People listening to me right now, they might say to themselves, I'm not sure if I like him, but I actually believe that he's not BSing me right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm interested in, and that's how I want companies to communicate in a way that the person immediately says, well, they're not BSing. They're being straight with me. They're being real with me. Southwest had a chance to be real. They spun it, and they called it a bunch of different things that it was not. They didn't anticipate what was going to happen with their pilots.
Mm-hmm.
And then, once it happened, they liked to point the finger at every other thing other than the fact that we didn't anticipate what was going to happen with our pilots.
Yeah.
It's a simple call. And by the way, you don't have to throw anybody under the bus to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just one of those things where you can say we respect what our pilots are doing, what our union is doing, whatever you want to call it. Okay, I don't know exactly how it works with Southwest.
Yeah.
But this is our situation. We don't know when we're going to get out of it. This is how we're going to make it right. This is how we're going to try to prevent it from happening again. But don't lie to me because I'm not dumb.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, it is amazing to me how so much of the communication out there is based on the person who is sharing it or the organization that's sharing it really believes you're dumb and naive.
Mm-hmm.
And this goes back to what I was saying as if you want to stand out in business, you start with the premise, my customer isn't dumb.
Mm-hmm.
My customer will either learn from me, the thing, whatever the thing is, or they're going to learn it from somebody else. That is up to me, partially. So I'm sure as heck going to do everything I can to make sure that I am a part of that decision. In other words, I inject myself into the conversation. Doesn't mean I'm going to win. Doesn't mean I'm winning the deal. In fact, I'm going to be so honest, I'm going to turn a lot of people away because I'm going to tell them our thing, our service, our product, our company isn't a good fit for you. Which, by the way, you want to talk transparency? The easiest way that you can right now as a business, if you're listening to this, on your website, definitively talk about who you're not a good fit for.
I love that.
Everybody talks about who they are, why they're awesome sauce. But the moment you're willing to say what you're not, Chris, is the moment you become dramatically more attractive to those who you are a good fit for.
Yeah.
That's powerful, man. But yet how many people do that? Very, very few.
Yeah. And that's moving towards relationship. I think if you're willing to do that.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely.
I'm glad you brought up I'm glad you got a little political because what you said, if Southwest would have just come out and said, we didn't anticipate.
That's right.
Immediately, you just humanized the issue. Has anybody ever been in a situation where things happen that you don't anticipate? We all have as leaders, and the best way to deal with it is to own it. I think that's what I found in my career. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. I'm a big Southwest fan, so I'm not beating up on Southwest here. I was just like, guys, come on, grab hold of the stick.
The thing is, you as a fan, you actually want to forgive them. Mm-hmm. You're looking for an excuse to forgive them.
That's right.
If they just came out to your point and they said, recently, we screwed up. We didn't realize that we were going to have a pilot shortage due to these mandates. And honestly, we haven't been trained for this. No company has. Mm-hmm. We're figuring out as we go. So we did mess up and it affected a lot of you. We ask for your forgiveness and we ask that you're patient with us. We promise to make it right if you stick with us.
Yeah.
I'm telling you what. Now, Domino's is the greatest example in the history of big brands that has done that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's the famous Yes We Did campaign where they openly said, yeah, you said our pizza tasted like cardboard. They said that.
Yes.
What a glorious way of bringing the elephant to the front of the room and saying, here it is. This is what you said. Man, that's powerful. No different than pools, you say. We talk about this. Fiberglass pools, they used to have all types of problems. They were constructed the wrong way. And that gave them a bad name over 25 years ago, but it gave them a bad name. And so you don't hide from that. You don't hide from history. You lean into it because it gives you a chance to say, but here's what's happened since then. Here's the changes that have been made. And people appreciate that. And everybody loves story arc. They just do. Inherently, we appreciate when somebody can rise from the ashes and improve the thing. That's part of the reason why the Ask You Answer did so really well. I mean, it was like, okay, you got a simple pool guy here and his business partners, of course. They're about to lose this company. And they say, okay, let's just become the Wikipedia of pools. And they become the Wikipedia of pools because they talk about stuff that nobody's ever talked about on their website. And look, they became the most trafficked swimming pool website in the world. That's story arc.
Absolutely.
Now, there's a bunch of technique in there of how they did it, but story arc matters, and you can use it in your favor, and you can also remember that when the stuff is hitting the fan, as it is for Southwest.
Absolutely. Those are all great points. Nobody hates a comeback story. In fact, we all cheer for the comeback kid, right?
We do. It's funny.
I remember Jim Harbaugh was captain comeback when he was here with the Colts, and it was a glorious time. And you're right, brands can rise out of the ashes from that. So I know you've faced adversity. We had Christian Shrilla, director of marketing for River Pools, on, a colleague of yours, earlier in our first episode, and talk a little bit about. And I think we're in a unique time because I think people are genuinely, and business leaders included, I find myself there, we're scared. We're scared to say what's really on our mind. We're scared to say what we're really thinking. Talk about just pushing through that, having the courage to push through it. What does it look like?
It is a weird time because we're becoming extremely tribal in society. And there's parallel societies that are forming, which doesn't bring me pleasure.
Right.
And you see that in business. You see that with this constant good guy, bad guy conversation. That group, bad guy. That group, good guy or gal or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And it, frankly, it vexes me quite a bit. I mean, just quite a bit. I have a general policy for myself because I'm a bit of a, like, although 99% of the world doesn't know me, 99.999, there's this really small corner of the world where a lot of people know me. And in that arena, I had a choice to make. Is either I was going to jump into the fray of endless blabbery and debate that's chock full of negative energy, or I was going to find ways to make people better and make businesses better. I was going to stay agnostic as possible. And I chose to be that.
Yep.
Now, most people can probably sense, maybe, where I am on certain things by what they read or say. But I can tell you with my agency, we have I got 70 employees over there.
Yep.
And it's a very social media type of crowd, right? It's not like my swimming pool company where, you know, most of those employees are not sitting there on all social media. It's like you put a bunch of marketers in a room and there's a lot of reach. There's a lot of social media.
Mm-hmm.
Our policy as a company is before you post the thing online, ask yourself, would my coworker feel good about this? And that's a pretty good one because our focus is what unites us,
Mm-hmm.
not what makes us different at our company, at my agency.
Yeah.
And
what's the name of that, Marcus?
it's
your
called
agency?
Impact.
Impact. Yep.
And the URL is impactplus.com.
Okay. Yep.
And so, that's something that I am a firm believer that the organizations that get aggressive with political causes and I think there's two types of political causes, right? There's political cause, and this is like there's different interpretations of this, but when I say political cause, there's some that would be, let's say, if somebody says, we as a company, we spend 1% of our revenues or profits towards a particular cause, human trafficking or homelessness or child hunger, whatever the thing is. Mm-hmm. That's universally, for the most part, except the 0.1% of nutsos, most people would say that's nice.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's organizations that are trying to be overtly political about things that are very divisive.
Yeah.
And let me say that if you make that choice as a CEO, you're literally saying, I don't want 50%, or I want to have disagreement with at least 50% of my customer base and potentially a certain percentage of my employees.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you say, well, we're taking a political stand, but all of our employees agree on that, that means in and of itself you have a non-inclusive company.
Yeah. Wow.
So you're not eating your own dog food at that point.
Right. Yeah.
If you have an employee base where 100% of them politically agree on all things, you have the least diverse of all companies in the world, and you should be ashamed. And everything you purport to represent is fundamentally false.
Right.
It's not true. Mm-hmm. And so I am not looking to just divide for no reason and to say, let's find all of our differences or let's get behind a cause that is going to promote major differences. Mm-hmm. I'm not interested in that, and I think it's bad, terrible advice. And I've seen a lot of marketing people go out there and say, the buyer of today and the Gen Z, Y, all, et cetera, they want you to be political. It's a lie. It's the biggest pile of BS that I might have heard of all the terrible advice that I've heard over my years. And I'll tell you why. Because here's the way these surveys are done. The surveys are done like this. Would you like the companies that you buy from to share their political beliefs? Oh, of course I would. Would you like to buy from people that do not share your political beliefs? Well, probably not.
Right.
So the thing about it is, the way it's asked, it's like, oh yeah. People say, I would love to know their beliefs. Not true.
Right.
It's not true, because now all of a sudden you've created this divisiveness, and that's why the studies are just total junk, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to recognize that if you're overtly political about divisive causes, you're going to lose audience, potential customers, and you will not unite people together.
Yeah.
And that's the bottom line for me. It ain't about red or blue or any other color in between. It's about, am I, with the things that I'm saying, focusing on how can we come together as a people, as a society, as employees, as team members, whatever that thing is, or what drives us apart. The reality too is this. What drives us apart is what gets the most ratings, it gets the most clicks, it's what gets the most attention. It's a crying shame.
Yes.
Unless you speak in absolutes, oftentimes people don't hear you. So you hear marketers say stupid things like, such and such is dead. Email marketing is dead. What a dumb statement. I mean, everybody listening to this right now has sent an email out today, and then they hear email marketing is dead. That person should lose their invisible, whatever you want to call it, marketing license and never be allowed to share again, because it's just terrible advice.
Absolutely.
Why do you have to do that? Well, truth is, absolutes get heard.
Yeah.
You can't say, generally speaking, and get the same amount of attention. I accepted that a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, I said, I'm not necessarily going to go viral with certain things.
Yeah.
And I don't really care, because I'm going to be honest with the things that I say.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to speak all the time in false absolutes. And I'm not going to divide. I'm going to look to unite. And that's why, too, if you look at the political spectrum and the people that follow me in the world, most of them are going to say, I really like Marcus. Mm-hmm. And then you say, well, politically, how do you feel about him? Well, he doesn't sit there and pontificate all day long about politics, but I know he's made me a better person, or I know he's made my business better. And that's what interests me.
Yeah, you've hit on so many great things in what you just said. I used to joke with my kids, and we're Star Wars fans, and we would say, who speaks in absolutes? The Sith. The Sith always speak in absolutes. And I think we're seeing some of that today. I think, the other cool thing that you just talked about is it reminded me of something a friend of mine said. We can be unified in the essentials, and we can have diversity in the non-essentials. When you think about brands and marketing, and you guys know this at your agency, it's about human experience. There is a heck of a lot of things that we can unite around.
Yep. The
human experience, it doesn't matter your color, your race, how you identify. There's a whole
100%.
lot of things around the human experience that we can identify around and unify around. But the forces at work are dividing us right now. I think it's a great opportunity
Very much so.
for brands to lead. If you could just talk about how can brands lead with transparency and change the dynamic? How can companies lead today and change the dynamic and show us a better way to unify around being human?
I think it starts with assuming positive intent. We have a rule at my agency,
Yeah.
which is when somebody says something that upsets you, first, before you make a rash reaction or judgment, first assume positive intent.
Yeah.
Did they really try to offend you or hurt you there? Now, there are certainly times when people do, and at that point they deserve whatever they get. When somebody doesn't, then we've got to learn to let things go. That's on an individual level. Now, on a brand level, what can we do? I think, to what you said a minute ago, Chris, there's power behind story. And I think some of these bigger brands especially, you're seeing them create more stories, and the stories can be very uniting. The campaigns can be very cause-worthy that everyone shares. Everyone says that's a good thing. It doesn't have to be pointing the finger. It doesn't have to be either you're with us or you're against us.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be I'm putting my stake in the ground, right?
Yes.
A line in the sand. And so I think we tell stories, better stories, show better stories of our customers, of our people, and the good things that they're doing, and the good employees that we have and the good things they're doing, and it's just like, to me, like, just take the often cited word these days, diversity.
Mm-hmm.
Companies love to say we're diverse. Interesting. So, do I know the stories of your people? Like, do I get to see them? Are they on your website?
Mm-hmm.
Do I get to meet them in a digital way? Do I feel like I've seen their face and heard their voice? And are they of? It's not just diversity in the political context. It's diversity of thought, right? It's like I'm intrigued by those things, and those are all like micro stories that you can be telling.
Yeah.
And showing, again, because it's tell and show, as a brand. To me, that's what makes me say that's truly a diverse company. But when somebody says it, it's just noise to me at this point, because everybody's saying it. Lots of catchwords.
Yeah.
And just, here, look at us. But
it loses meaning.
It loses meaning. Again,
Yeah.
it's just noise to the marketplace.
Yep. Yeah. So, look, this has been great. We could go on and on. I mean, I love your passion, man.
Thank you.
I am looking forward to seeing you speak. I'll get to a couple times this year just because of our affiliation with what you guys do at River Pools. Tell us a little bit more about your agencies and who you help in those things.
Well, I'm fortunate to have written They Ask You Answer. Obviously, They Ask You Answer, the philosophy changed my life, saved our business at River Pools, but it's now changed the lives and businesses of thousands and thousands around the world. It's quite amazing. And that has led to many, many people reaching out to me and my company saying, I believe what I just read in that book. I want us to be that. I want to be more transparent. I want to be the voice of trust in our space. I want to answer their questions. I want to do business better and differently. And so we help companies today implement They Ask You Answer within their business. And it's been amazing, right, to watch it. And we help them really just take control of their digital sales and marketing. So we're a training and coaching company. We also have an online learning platform called Impact Plus that if you, in a very inexpensive way, want to take quite a few digital sales and marketing courses and just up your game dramatically, just go to impactplus.com. It's like $500 a year, so it's dirt cheap, but it's very
great.
transformative. And we have a free They Ask You Answer course that I have on there. Just go to impactplus.com, and it's a 2-hour video course. I created it for you, if you're listening to this, to really understand better the nuts and bolts of They Ask You Answer. So, yeah, man, that's the journey. And of course, I speak full time during pandemics. Most of that's online, but I've gotten around. I was in the UK and spoke to 1,100 people 2 weeks ago, and I've already done probably 9 in-persons since we started opening back up, and I'm sure next year I'll get back out there again. But
somebody wants you as a speaker, how do they find you?
Yeah, just go to marcussheridan.com or just type pool guy online. You probably find me somehow that way.
All right. Marcus, thanks so much for being on the show. This is a wrap for our second episode of Shift Digital. Really appreciated having you. Got some great insight. You got a book in the future about transparency marketing?
I do. I mean, They Ask You Answer is the ultimate of transparency. It's had 2 editions. I came out with a book on video called The Visual Sale last year. So that's still available. But I've got something that I'm cooking that is on transformative leadership communication. I think it'll be the most transcendent book that I ever write. They Ask You Answer is done well, but I think this next book that I write on transformative leadership communication, I think it'll be a game changer. Yeah, I do.
Well, I'll tell you this: we've been blessed by They Ask You Answer here at our agency at Media Fuel, and it's just been great having you on. Thanks for your insights. Keep pressing forward, man.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
All right, that's a wrap, everybody. Thanks for joining us on Shift Digital. And our next speaker is a bit of a surprise, so we're going to tease you with that, make you curious. Be sure to join us for our next episode. This is Chris Bass signing off.